And so I said, enough's enough. I'm tired of dealing with this. I'm going to solve the problem. And that led me down the path of becoming a tech entrepreneur, ultimately building a piece of technology in a tech company. And, one thing led to another. And we built this thing. We landed thousands of clients and customers all over the country. I found myself in the middle of a bunch of lawsuits, which was insane.
Right.
Survived all of those and sold the company and then lived to write a book about my experience. So that's where I am today.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stephenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where we inspire you to live your best audacious life ever. I'm totally thrilled to be here with you today, and I deeply appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us on this journey of growth, resilience, and transformation. Each episode is designed to empower you to embrace your true potential, and today is no exception. Now, imagine standing at the base of a towering mountain, its summit cloaked in clouds. As you prepare to embark on your climb, you pause to reflect on why you chose this mountain in the first place. What drives you to reach the peak? This is the essence of our discussion today. Embracing your why without a clear understanding of what propels you forward, the climb can feel daunting and uncertain. In today's episode, we'll explore several vital concepts that can fuel your entrepreneurial journey: the importance of self-awareness, the crucial role of preparation, and the power of leveraging your network, and how to learn from each no you encounter along the way. These principles are your climbing gear, essentially, and you'll need them for navigating all of the challenges you have ahead. I'm super excited to introduce our guest today. His name is Derrick Girard. Derrick is a tech entrepreneur and an author whose journey from the financial services industry to building a successful tech company is nothing short of inspiring. He faced many challenges, including navigating lawsuits and overcoming the odds, and his story is a testament to resilience and determination. Derrick's insights will resonate with anyone looking to understand their driving force and leveraging their experiences for growth. And you also hear about his book because he's an author, Put It to the Test, and we'll talk about that as well. Like I said, great conversation, great insights that I'm certain you'll all enjoy. So without any further ado, here's my chat with Derrick. Enjoy. Hey, Derrick, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you for taking the time to be here, my friend. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity. This is it's going to be a great time.
For sure, for sure. One of the things I oftentimes say is that we have the opportunity so you and I are going to engage in a dialogue, and the people have the opportunity to get the eavesdrop, if you will, on what we're talking about, and the idea of them taking something from our conversation and in their own lives to help them on a maybe taking a higher trajectory or higher level is just fascinating to be a part of something like that and blessed. And so thank you for helping me fulfill my mission here, because it is very important as I see it.
Yeah, thank you. And I've had a chance to listen to some of the other podcasts, so this is going to be a lot of fun.
Good, good, good. Well, thank you. You have a particular niche in sort of the financial services industry. You've been in the entrepreneurial space for a number of years, and often your book that we'll talk about. But you have a very unique perspective, and maybe as a starting point, I can get you to introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us a little bit about the work that you've done and what's gotten you to the point that you're at now.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go back to the beginning because I think it shapes a lot of who I am and what I've done. I grew up an Army brat, was all over the world as a kid, and graduated high school just barely. I was one of those guys in high school, not the greatest student. And then got into, after I went to college and joined the military myself, I got into the financial services industry, and I had a really cool career. I did a lot of really interesting things in that space. I didn't just start as an advisor and stay there. So I got to do a lot of leadership things, which was really cool. And it helped me learn a lot about the business itself and how you
Mhm.
coach people and how you lead people through different things they're dealing with. And then ultimately I found myself in a kind of a crazy position where I had a technology problem, and I'm not a technology guy, but I faced this technology problem and there was no solution. And
Yeah.
I knew myself and basically everybody across the industry faced this same problem. And so I said, enough's enough. I'm tired of dealing with this. I'm going to solve the problem. And that led me down the path of becoming a tech entrepreneur, ultimately building a piece of technology in a tech company. And, one thing led to another. And we built this thing. We landed thousands of clients and customers all over the country. I found myself in the middle of a bunch of lawsuits, which was insane.
Right.
Survived all of those and sold the company and then lived to write a book about my experience. So that's where I am today.
Listen, if you can come out the other side and put in a book, then you're very, very successful, I think. Because
Yeah,
many aren't.
it was interesting, that's for sure.
I love the journey from not being a tech guy to starting a tech company. That's a huge cavernous leap. I hope you realize that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things people kept saying to me when I sold the company and sort of the dust settled on everything. People were like, "How did you do that?" And they wanted to understand, how I went from being an advisor to building a tech company, and then how I didn't have all this money sitting in the bank and venture capital funding, and how did you land all these massive companies, and how do you not have a legal background and you managed three massive lawsuits, and how did you do this? And I wanted to write this book to basically say, look, there's nothing about me that's special. There's nothing about me that's so unique. You can't do the same thing. And so I wanted to be able to share that story and go, look, my journey is not unique. I just went through some different things, but there's nothing about me that's special. And that's what I want to share in the book.
Very modest, I would say, but I'll give you that. But certainly, I think the piece, and not that the how is important, and it absolutely is. But the why, I think, is kind of my first. What motivated you? What pushed you to go beyond what you didn't know, or step in the uncertainty, or be audacious enough to go into the darkness where you had no idea to figure things out? That would be my thing. Can you talk about your why?
You mean in terms of like why build the company? Why
Yeah,
go down that path?
yeah, yeah.
I think it's sort of the nature of how I was raised. I was raised in, very modest living. My family was basically poor my entire life. My parents' family was very poor their entire life. And so I grew up learning how to do just about anything that needed to be done. So that's why to this day I can do electrical work and plumbing work and tile work and I can shingle a house because we had to do all that stuff. Nobody else was going to do it. And so when this problem came up, again, I don't know the slightest thing about technology. Like, I don't know how to build an application for software, but I knew there was a solution. I knew the solution existed. And so I just needed to find the right people. I needed to ask the right questions to the right people to figure out the right path to go down, knowing it's not going to be perfect, knowing it's going to be bumpy, but I wasn't afraid of the questions and I wasn't afraid of the answer. And the answer was work. And so none of
Mm.
that bothered me because that's how I was raised. It just was sort of born and or sort of forced into me as a kid growing up, and that was just it.
It's interesting because one of the things I made a point that I wanted to talk about is the process for problem solving, right? And
Mhm.
and when you because because we're all going to be faced with challenges, obstacles,
Mhm.
pitfalls. They may not be the exact same. They
Yep.
might, but at the same time, it's incumbent on us to figure out how to kind of to get past or overcome them.
Mhm.
Um, and so as you pointed out, you start asking questions. I think that's a really
Mhm.
cool place to start. Searching for outside resources, trying to figure out if there is an answer. So earlier you said you had a problem that didn't have a solution, right? Like then what do you do then? And I think those are all important pieces of the process, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and it was not only figuring out what questions to ask, but then you got to figure out who are the right people to ask them to.
Mm,
And so that's the other thing that was really kind of fun. That's sort of the research that goes into it that I think a lot of people are afraid of. Is what the answer could lead you to, right? When you know the answer is going to be a lot of work, that's fine. To me, it was, all right, am I asking the right questions? Am I asking the right people? Am I going down the right path? And that was the fun part. That was the exciting part about the
Right.
whole thing was, and I never went into this feeling like I already have the answer. I'm looking for somebody to confirm it or affirm my opinion. I
Hmm.
went into it free and clear going, I don't have the answer, but man, I'm a sponge. I'm going to ask everything. And it's amazing. You start asking a lot of people the or similar questions, you start hearing similar things.
Mm.
And so it's like, all right, I'm getting very similar responses. So that's the path I'm going to go down. And I'm going to keep, asking those questions. And so that was the whole path. And it was the same thing when I was building the company. When people would say, how did you land these massive financial institutions that would never talk to a startup? How did you do that? It was all in the questions. I had to find out who I needed to talk to. How do I get in touch with them? What do I say? How often do I say it? So it was just that sort of constant research that led me to build a tech company without knowing a thing about tech.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, are there, um, mindsets or good habits to form or develop as you're sort of moving through? Well, good habits that will help you stay resilient or resourceful as you're moving through these challenging periods.
Mhm. Well, there's a couple of things that I touch on in the book that I think is really important, and I even talk about in different speaking things that I do now. Is one, understanding your internal why, and I think you kind of touched on that a little bit. But why is this important to me? Why do I care? Why does this matter? It's amazing to me how many people don't start with that, right? They do something because they feel like they have to, or they do something because they feel like they're supposed to.
Hmm.
And the why never really makes any sense, which means when it gets really hard and you don't have a really good why am I here to begin with?
Right.
Then you quit, right? You see this all the time with college kids, right? They go to college because they think they're supposed to. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, school is not fun and they quit. It's because they didn't go there for a very good reason. They went there because my friends go here and that's just what you do.
Right.
So
Right.
to me, I think that's really, really important. And from a foundational perspective, that matters a ton. And the other one is, I think the second most important component to this whole thing is understanding how important self-awareness is. And
Mm.
I talk about in the book, how I firmly believe, and I've gotten this wrong, how self-confidence is a terrible substitution for self-awareness,
Hmm.
right? You can be so confident in my abilities to do anything. I can tackle the world, right? But if I'm not self-aware enough to understand my own strengths and weaknesses and be honest with myself, that's
Right.
going to be a problem. And so,
Right.
and I, one of the things I say all the time, and people laugh at, but it's like the problem with people that don't have self-awareness is they don't know it, right?
That's right.
And
That's right.
so that's a really, to me, those two things at the foundation are probably the most important thing that I stress to people all the time is have a really good why and then understand the importance of self-awareness.
When we talk about self-awareness, I oftentimes use an analogy to describe that, and I start with the image of a living room, right? So, in your living room, you got your coffee table, your couch, your television, your lamp in the corner. You got some
Yep.
plants, the standard living room. Well, if you turn off the light doesn't make things go away, and when you turn on the light doesn't make them come back. They were always there the entire time. What
Yep.
the light allowed you to do was to see the things that were there. So instead of walking the room and stubbing your toe on the coffee table, you can avoid it or navigate yourself through that room with the light. And that's kind of
Yeah.
how I think of self-awareness.
That's a great example. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so we sort of touched a little bit on growth, and I think it's hard not to talk about growth in business and scaling up and
Mhm.
because what you want to do in business, right? You're there to get bigger and do more and have more sales and more clients and customers, that kind of stuff. There is there I mean I know there's all sorts of philosophy on how you grow, and you talk depends on who you're talking to, though, the different rates of speed and what have you. I think, though, a key aspect, regardless how fast you grow as an organization,
Mhm.
the core sort of values and the culture still need to be there, and they still need to be intact.
Yep.
And so I guess wondering, curious about sort of your approach on growing and scaling and getting bigger, but also maintaining your values as an organization.
Yeah, when this company started growing and we really started getting bigger, it was important to me that one of the things that was really important to me is I used to say the staff all the time is that we interacted with financial advisors all across the country, right? And I was trying to get them because I was one to understand the stresses of an advisor. What are some of the things they go through every day? And what are the things that really frustrate and upset an advisor?
Hmm.
And so I needed them to all understand, look, this isn't, you're just not here doing customer support without any interest in our clientele. I need you to understand the clientele. Because when
Right.
they call in, if they need support, you also need to understand they're used to getting a phone queue. You're used to getting bounced around all over the place to all these different departments.
Right.
And so they would get frustrated really quick because all they generally want are answers so they can move on. And so one of the things that I stressed was one of the most important parts of what we did as an organization was we changed expectations.
Okay.
When you interacted with us, you were going to interact with a human being every single time, not a phone queue. And you were
Mm.
going to see how quickly not only we listen, but we address any problem or any challenge you face. You're going to understand how much we actually care about your usage, the product, your clients, how you use our piece of technology. And that was key. So as we grew, I never wanted to grow so fast that that got left behind.
Right.
And anytime I felt like it was, we just stopped and reassessed. That was like why I was always willing to pick up the phone and do customer support because
Mm.
I'm going to show you how important this is. I'm not too important to do this. This is the most important thing that we do every single day. And so the culture for the organization was constantly focused on our client and how do we
Yeah.
deliver the best possible experience and change expectations for them. And that's what ultimately led to the success because we couldn't afford marketing. We didn't have the money for it. And so
Mm.
people are like, how did you land all these customers? And the answer was word of mouth.
Yeah.
And the only way that happens is when you go out of your way to do those things. And that started with the foundation of understanding how important culture was.
Yeah, no, I can see that, and it's growing at one client at a time. So if the
Mhm.
culture is providing the best possible experience or service to that particular client or customer, then that's what you do in that moment, and recognizing that the business model is based on referrals and
Mhm.
and good experiences and positive interactions. And so when you have that, you start to collect them. That I can see where the growth happens. How long did it take you for that growth to take place from when you started to when you were at sort of optimal level?
It, I mean, relative, it didn't take long, a couple of years.
Okay.
The other thing is, I love talking about this, is we got told no a lot. So, we were building a piece of technology that the industry didn't have, and the industry didn't even realize it was really a problem yet.
Okay.
And so when you're on the front end of that, you're trying to create the market, you're trying to create the need. And so all these massive organizations and smaller ones, they told us no. And I always use the term professionally persistent. I didn't give up. I just stayed and stayed and stayed in touch with these people. Well, eventually that all worked. And everyone who told us no became a client.
Mm.
And it was only a few years in. I started the company beginning of 2017. The lawsuit started at the end of 2019. And when that mess happened, we stopped marketing basically because all of our extra money went to pay lawyers. And so
Right.
by that time, our focus was on building the product and building everything that we had with the clientele we had, and then just referrals and word of mouth and everything else just spread like wildfire. So again, relative, it feels like in the moment it's taking forever, but
Yeah.
relative, a couple of years for a startup, it didn't take long at all.
So curious, what if you could sort of talk about what the product was and what it did, and why did you believe in it the way you did to keep going?
Well, it's crazy to think about what the product was. So all it was a simple text message. So back then, for me to be able to communicate with my clients through text was a big no-no. You weren't allowed to do it. It wasn't complying all these regulatory requirements. You couldn't do it. And every time my clients would text me, which was all the time, because that's how people wanted to
Right.
communicate,
Right.
I would go to my compliance officer and say, there has to be a solution. And the answer was no, there isn't. And so this tool allowed myself and all my peers in the industry to be able to communicate through text message compliantly and not get in trouble. And
Gotcha.
now, if you ever see, publications or there's stories written, these big financial services firms are getting hit with hundreds of millions of dollars in fines for this exact problem. So I knew it was going to be a bigger issue than it was initially, and it has.
Gotcha.
And that was why we built this problem. And I believed in it because there's two components to it. I knew what the challenges were for the compliance team that were trying
Yep.
to stay compliant
Hmm.
because I was a compliance officer. And I knew the challenge for the advisor who just wanted to have an open line of communication with their client. And because, like I used to tell my staff all the time, I am our user. Like I am literally the reason this product exists,
Right.
is I felt like I was speaking and acting on behalf of myself and my peers. And I also think that's what helped us build a better product than anybody else who came along after us, because I didn't build it for money. I built it because I faced the problem and I knew everybody else did as well. And that's what I
Mm.
stress all the time about when you build a business is, it's problem solution business. And I think a lot of people these days do it backwards. They're like, I want to be an entrepreneur. So they build a business, they create a solution, and then they go out and try to find the problem. And then you wonder why the business doesn't work. So,
Yeah. 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 No, I see that, and but if you reverse it,
mhm,
and really put a process to it, right? And
mhm,
follow that flow. It certainly does make sense.
yeah.
Um, want to talk about sort of specific, if you could share sort of a specific example of a challenge that you overcome. You sort of talked about the lawsuits as being a big thing for you. Um, and so I kind of would want to hear a little bit what that challenge was, but more importantly, and the part that I just think is so important is what you took away. What was the learning piece that you learned from that experience?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a million challenges along the way. I mean, heck, growing up the way I grew up, I could talk about that, but I'll use the lawsuits is because it's an easy one. I found myself in this position where, I had a lawsuit with my business partner who happened to be my uncle, who was my
Hmm.
computer programmer. I
Okay.
had one with an investor who, decided all of a sudden he wanted the terms of his investment to be different. And then I had one with a competitor, somebody that I ended up competing with who had a patent and they couldn't compete with us. So they said, let's go after him for patent infringement. And so the challenge was, in a matter of months, I went from we're on sky high, the business is doing this, we're landing the biggest fish in the sea
Yeah.
to, oh my goodness, now I have three massive lawsuits. And so what I did and how I handled it was the only thing I knew how to do was I couldn't fly blind. I couldn't be out of the know. And so, like I joke all the time, I basically became a law student. I just studied the law. As
Wow.
crazy and as not exciting as that is, I had three different scenarios and I just studied. And when I would interact with my attorneys, of which I had 12 of them at one point,
Wow.
I was bringing stuff to their attention because I was so well versed in everything that was going on. And so, there's the Marine Corps, there's the old 6 P's: proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. That's how they say it in the Marine Corps. And so for me, I just wanted to be so prepared. And honest to God, that's how we made it through all of them and won all of them, was because I was so prepared. There were no curveballs, there were no
Right.
surprises. I didn't know everything, but I was prepared for anything. And that's the way it worked.
Mm.
And that's my advice to anybody is
Yeah.
really understand how important preparation is.
Um, and ironically, my next question was going to be if you were to give advice to entrepreneurs who are sort of going through challenges and setbacks, and these
Mhm.
things threaten their vision or threaten their organization. Kind of would that be? And I'm hearing I'm guessing preparation is a big part of that advice that you give.
Yeah, I would say there's two things. Preparation is the one thing I did really well. But there's one thing I didn't do very well at all. And I stress all the time to any entrepreneur to do it better than I did. And that is understand the importance of your network. One of the things that I did when I was building this was I networked a lot, right? I built this great network of professionals and industry experts and all these great people. But when the lawsuits hit, I kind of went into a shell where I didn't want my problems to be somebody else's burden. And so all of these people I should have been leaning on to sort of take some of the burden off of myself, even if it was just emotionally for, a 30-minute conversation. I didn't. And so I say it all the time. It takes like a very special and kind of stupid person to do it the way that I did it,
Yeah.
because I just took all of the burden on myself of building this company that just kept growing, even in spite of all this. The trajectory stayed the same. It was crazy. But I also took the burden of, running the business and the lawsuits. And oh, by the way, being a good father and husband at the same time. I took it all on myself for that solid 3.5 years while I dealt with the lawsuits. And so my advice is always understand your network, understand who in your network you can lean on, and don't leave them out. So it's been amazing to me how many people have read the book and said, I had no idea you were going through this. I wish
Right.
you would have said something. And I'm sitting back going, I wish I would have too. It certainly would have made my life a little bit easier, I think, along the way.
Right, right, right. No, I can certainly see that. So certainly bringing in the right folks to help, right? Is really also, I oftentimes refer to them as outside resources, right? What
Mhm.
resources can I bring in to help? But overall, I do sort of like that sort of that figure it out type of mentality, right? Like,
Mhm.
I would imagine there's a certain level of excitement to it. Like sometimes when you're faced with a problem, and okay, and how do we bite into this, regardless of the scope or how big it is, right? Like there
Mhm.
is there some excitement for you around trying to figure it out and get to the bottom of it?
Excitement, yeah. If you're wired like me, that's exciting. Some people it's scary.
Yeah.
One of the things I say all the time is figure it out to a lot of people means not my problem, right? So you'll hear this every once in a while when someone's like, "Oh, you figure it out. You figure it out." And really what they're saying is not my problem, right? This isn't my problem to solve. And so the real question is, what do you do when it is? What do you do when nobody else is going to solve this for you? What do you do when it has to get done? Excuses don't work. You have to do something about it.
Right.
It's amazing what can be done. It's amazing how people can respond when they finally sort of flip that switch in their head that says, I can't force this on somebody else. I have to solve this. And
Mhm.
that's sort of the ultimate test. And I call it the FIO mindset. And I say all the time, everybody has this. It generally gets triggered during times of extreme stress or
Sure.
tension.
Yep.
It's there. I promise you it's there. When it's triggered, how do you respond is what matters. And that's kind of why I wanted to write the book, to say, in my opinion, based on what I've been through, here are some of the components to that. And it's not a step-by-step process. It's not like step one, do this, step two, do this.
Right. Right.
Not that
Right.
simple.
No,
Yeah.
no, no, no. The whole process to it. The book is called "Put It to the Test." When life demands more, will you make excuses or figure it out? So you've got "figure it out" right in the title of your book there, and I believe everything is figure outable. I'm not sure if that's a word or not, but I just made it up
Yeah.
because it is. And so I think sort of taking that approach or taking that mindset as a regular way of facing challenges, I think that's could be a very healthy thing, not just for your professional life, but your personal one as well.
The personal side, and I use many examples in the book of personal struggles myself and people that I know. And that's a lot of times with that being honest with yourself, understanding your why, being self-aware. It's so many people these days, I think, are so stubborn sometimes. I think personally, they don't want to acknowledge maybe I'm a bigger part of the problem than I want to believe I am, or maybe I'm not committing myself fully to the solution. Whether it's personal, professional, those things really matter. And I think that's why I use some of those examples in the book, to get people to understand that this doesn't just apply professionally. This absolutely has a massive application personally. And I think once you understand it, hopefully more people will understand how to work through difficulties they have in other relationships.
Would you say that the most sort of rewarding sort of lesson that you've learned in your journey?
Yeah, one of the interesting things that happened to me was when I wrote the book and it was being published, one of the questions I was asked was, what's the genre of the book? And in my mind, right, I'm talking about my military experience in business, and one of the publishing companies said, this is like a self-help book. And I remember laughing, going, I wrote a self-help book? Are you out of your mind? There's no way I wrote a self-help book.
Right, right.
And then I read it again and I'm going, yeah, it absolutely is. And that's one of the really cool things about it, is that, again, the application is so wide, but it's been really cool to see people's feedback and how the little things they take away from it that I
Sure.
wrote, that you've probably heard before, but maybe the way I say it just resonates a little bit different.
Curious, is there a piece of advice maybe you thought you were given that you had to learn on your entrepreneurial journey when you first started?
I mean, I don't know that I remember getting the advice, but I remember one thing that I learned along the way is don't take no for an answer.
Mm,
And for me, I don't believe, there's this old saying, one step forward, two steps back, right? To me, there's a lesson to be learned in anything, especially something that doesn't go your way. And again, I use these massive organizations that told us no every time. I didn't take no as an answer. I stayed professionally persistent. I did everything I could to understand why did they say no and how do I make sure I never hear no for the same reason again, because I'm going to
right.
fix that. And I stayed the course, and I didn't give up. And so it's easy when you hear no repeatedly to say,
Yep.
this just isn't it. But to me, that was just every no was an opportunity to learn, was an opportunity to improve and just keep pushing forward.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Curious for those aspiring entrepreneurs or maybe or leaders are out there, if you were to sort of think about from that context, what do you think the most audacious goal that you believe they should be pursuing?
Look, building a business, building a company, building something from the ground up is so awesome. It's so great to do. Elon Musk has a quote, starting a business or being an entrepreneur is like staring into the abyss, chewing on glass. And when I heard it, I'm like, man, that's aggressive, but probably not far off, right?
Right, right,
And so I love the idea. And so the people that are aspiring, I find a challenge, tackle that challenge, like hit that thing head on, no excuses, figure out how to get it done and get it done. The other thing I say, and I really stress, because I think this is really, really important, find other people that have done it. And I tell people all the time, I'm happy to be that person. If you're trying to build something from the ground up,
right,
find other people that have done it. And that's not to say somebody who's running a successful company isn't a great person to have in your network, but the person running it is very different than the person that built it. I'm sorry, they just are. It's a very different set of challenges you go through.
right,
And
right.
so find those people that have done it. And it might be a completely different industry, it might be a different field altogether, but you'll be amazed if you build a network of those people, what you can gather just from understanding other people that have been through that same journey.
That was like some great, great, great advice. Again, for listeners, the book is called Put It to the Test. When Life Demands More, Will You Make Excuses or Figure It Out? Tell me about the title. What went into the meaning of that when you said put it to the test? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I went back and forth with all kinds of different titles, and really it just came down to the book wasn't just intended to be about my journey building the company. I use it as sort of the foundation of it, but everybody gets put to the test. Everybody gets challenged. And what does figure it out actually mean? And so I wanted to be able to say, when you get put to the test, I don't care what that test is. When you realize excuses won't work, when you realize nobody else is going to figure it out, how do you actually figure it out? And that's what I wanted to get across in the title of the book, Put to the Test.
For our listeners that wanted to connect with you directly or pick up a copy of your book or learn more about your work, where could we send them?
Yeah, so the easiest place to get all that information is my website. It's just my name, derrickgirard.com. The book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Walmart and all over the place. But all those links are on the website as well. And you can reach out to me if you want to pick my brain. If you need help, if I can help in any way, by all means, all my contact information is there. You can reach out.
Oh, we'll certainly make sure that the all the appropriate contact details will be in the show notes below. So I would encourage listeners to connect with those methods as well. Derrick, thank you for this. Thank you for the time. It's been great. I really appreciate the insights, and what I love about your journey is when people and we see that oftentimes where people go through a set of challenges or obstacles, and that's where the story stops, right? It's when all the bad stuff happened. But I think the most rewarding, impactful, and empowering is, what did you do to get out of it, and how did you do that, and how did you, what did you have to turn to, or what resources you have to bring in, and put that, and package that. In your case, put it in a book and share with others. It's a phenomenal thing. So congratulations on that as well, your journey. And again, thank you for being a guest today on the Audacious Living Podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
For sure. Back we are here on the podcast. Thanks and appreciation goes out to Derrick for being here. During our chat, he shared invaluable lessons about embracing self-awareness and preparation. One of my points that I really loved from our discussion was when you emphasize that preparation is not just about having a plan; it's about being ready to tackle any curveball life throws your way. This mindset has been instrumental in his success and can be for you as well. I encourage you to connect with Derrick directly. His website, derrickgirard.com, offers a wealth of resources, again, including his book, Put It to the Test, which is available on major platforms like Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Don't miss the opportunity to dive deeper into his insights and learn from his experiences. As a special offer, Derrick has graciously provided a downloadable resource that complements the book, which of course you can access that if you check out the show notes below for more details. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode and found value in Derrick's insights, please take a moment to like, follow, subscribe, or share this podcast with family and friends if you haven't already done so. Your support is crucial in helping us grow and reach even more listeners eager to live their best lives. Until next time, remember, embrace your why, stay self-aware, prepare for success, leverage your network, and learn from every experience. Stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stephenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.